Hi, welcome to the Go Higher Frequency Astrology channel. My name is Suzanne. Join me as I investigate how the cycles are progressing with a focus on how we can use this energy more productively. Today, I'm going to be talking about the fire horse energy that is so descriptive of the movement of Pisces into Aries, the fever and mind virus we are now experiencing as an extension of the COVID years, and what clues the new moon in Aries on April the 17th might give us about the ceasefire negotiations in Iran. I will also be talking about the Venus-Uranus conjunction in relationship to the women in Trump's cabinet. Will there be another firing? Or perhaps another shocking revelation involving a female figure in his cabinet. As always, I'm leaving timestamps below so you can skip around to the parts that interest you the most. And please show me some love if you enjoy this video. Thank you. Some people call the fire horse year a fever dream, and this describes so well the movement between Pisces and Aries. When Saturn and Neptune conjunct in Aries in February, we were still finishing up the Pisces cycle. The last new moon in Pisces was the transition. Coming up against the harsh reality of the recent Iranian invasion, in contrast to some of the Pisces delusional dreams of the past year, were still sinking in. The old narratives were starting to break down. We could no longer ignore the reality of the material world pounding on our door. The initial slow awakening and then abrupt and rude awakening, not isolated to, but certainly illustrated in the slow and then sudden fracturing of the MAGA movement, as Trump defiantly smashed most of his campaign promises, snubbing his nose at those people who dared to call him out. The most egregious of these were the Epstein files, and the final straw, the strikes on Iran. It wasn't simply Trump either. Many of us felt betrayed by our leaders and institutions across the board, especially the ones who have so easily acquiesced, who've kept silent, who've gone out of their way to prop up a broken and increasingly corrupt system. Those who have the power and do not use it for the greater good, but instead find ways to profit from it. Richard Tarnas speaks to this fever dream in relationship to the Saturn-Neptune conjunctions. Saturn-Neptune periods bring about a heightened sense of disillusionment and loss of faith, of discontent and disenchantment. And there is a strong sense in these periods of the empowerment that can emerge from confronting an illusion, shedding a faith that is no longer viable, waking as if from a dream, lucidly recognizing the consensus madness, demystifying the received version of reality. Just as the illusions and mythology of America were played out and dispelled during the years following the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Libra in the 50s, testing our leadership in the areas of justice and equality, the white picket fence mirage of the perfect family, women's roles in society, we are now experiencing the early days of disillusionment from the opposite side of the wheel, testing our leadership in the areas of personal sovereignty, the mythology of the American dream and the role of immigrants in that mythology, the defenders and policemen of the free world, and men's roles in society. You could describe this as our collective immune system breaking down even further, since we have just experienced the opening sextile of the Saturn-Pluto conjunction that announced the arrival of COVID. The physical virus has seemingly evolved into a mind virus that is now attacking itself, thinking it is eradicating some external threat. Fear has co-opted our waking reality, unhinged behavior from our country's leaders, war in the Middle East, And general chaos has put us into 24/7 crisis survival mode. And we haven't even gotten to the midterms yet. An astrologer recently posted a warning about a propaganda push that is coming to target people psychographically for the upcoming midterms. The next Scorpio full moon theme suggests as much. And while I often think we have all become more wise about this, I think we have to be continuously reminded, especially as the chaos has gone into overdrive with the recent invasion. While we all need to take active steps to make this world a better place, we also need to disconnect from the psychological warfare that is constantly attempting to co-opt our attention as often as we can, or we will simply feed into this virus. I know for me, it is very challenging to keep up my immunity, to remember to disconnect, to not get pulled into the narratives that seek to co-opt my mind. Our focus is really our freedom. So practicing things like mental hygiene is as important as physical exercise and healthy eating. Don't overlook this in your own life. When we are amidst an awakening period, when we experience large-scale instability and power vacuums, political and social unrest, there is an attempt to exert control via a collapse narrative. This is when predatory behavior becomes more pronounced. Those who seek power over take advantage of the anxiety that naturally surfaces to exert control over others. As chaos ensues, most people who are locked in a system can easily give up control, especially if they think someone else can give them peace, security, and certainty. Narcissists, in particular, destabilize and disempower so they can take advantage of our psychology. As social beings who look to others for approval, they often will play one side against the other, doing whatever it takes to gain the upper hand. Once you are vulnerable, they swoop in and offer a solution, protection, so they can take more and more control of your life. Trump's recent post about destroying a civilization shows exactly what he wants his followers to feel and walks them through the process of mirroring him. It is the cycle of abuse employed by every violent domestic abuser and every dictator. Shock them, confuse them, save them, lock them in, and weaponize them. And the real mindfuck to all of the end times propaganda out there is it seeks the one world government model that all the previous end timers railed against. The concept of engineering a cycle purposefully to force a confrontation with the end times is the ultimate delusion. It's like it's come full circle as the self-fulfilling prophecy these kinds of narratives can provoke. Talk about being stuck on the Dharma wheel, which really is the astrological wheel. Oh, that cycle is coming up again. Might as well lean into it. For example, Teal's whole strategy amounts to leaning into these cyclic delusions, not to direct the same old narratives, but to flip it on its head, to make use of it for his own aims. By playing this narrative out in the extreme ways that we are seeing it play out on the world stage is its own type of exorcism, which is symbolic of the Neptune-Uranus cycle that began around the time of the Iraq War. We are now also experiencing the opening sextile of that cycle. Ironically, Christ was offered as a collective sacrifice to end these cycles of conflict, and instead, his death merely perpetuated the cycles now in his name. Neptune in Aries and Pluto in Aquarius, in particular, is a cyclic period that incites rebellion against old power structures that have created severe imbalances. It's religiously fervent because that's how the energy is often channeled, especially when it's against dictatorships or old religious structures that no longer serve the people. Belief systems, ideologies, delusions, something people can believe in to make the cost of such rebellion worth it. Everyone is looking for the promised land where they are free and can live an unencumbered life. People need ways to channel their frustration, and Neptune can cloud the path ahead. Oftentimes, we are simply directed into a new mousetrap by those who seek control. Neptune is the mirage, the collective psychosis, the mob. In a recent Wall Street Journal article, Australia's former Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull remarked, "People admire the Wild West cowboy approach to geopolitics only when it's successful. America's friends are not just hoping for an early end to this war of choice. They also hope that America's fever breaks, that wild, impulsive, strategic moves are replaced by a more orderly approach to geopolitics." In this same article, Carlo Calenda, an Italian senator and former economic development minister, said, "Everyone is confused. Nobody can understand what America actually is today. It seems governed by some kind of mad emperor who keeps saying whatever comes to his mind, something we haven't witnessed since Caligula or Nero." Funny enough, if you watched my video about the Antichrist, this is that Pluto in Aquarius and Neptune in Aries cycle, repeating from that time. The one thing the Europeans have understood is that we're dealing with a bully. You can give him everything he wants. You can pretend you don't hear his insults, but he will keep trying to bully us. And so at some point, we must stop him. The question on everyone's minds is, can they stop him? Can we? The unfortunate reality for the West is that a divided house more easily falls. The new moon in Aries arrives the weekend before the 15-day ceasefire with Iran is set to expire, and 2 days before the late Ali Khamenei's birthday, which features a triple conjunction of Mars, Saturn, and Mercury at 7 degrees of Aries. The new moon in gate 3, difficulty at the beginning, opposes Netanyahu's sun in Libra in gate 50, the cauldron. Gate 50 in this line is a determination to overcome adversity to achieve one's goals. This type of battle fuels Netanyahu's sense of purpose. The new moon energy, while immature, holds an equal determination to triumph, to mutate, and to grow more powerful in opposition. The new moon is in sextile relationship to the recent new moon eclipse in Aquarius. So we will most likely experience further developments that will impact current supply chains and may force everyone to seek quicker technological advancements of renewable energy resources that will curb our addiction to oil. This new moon in the Venus decan of Aries, on one hand, speaks to a moment of ease in an arduous time, a celebratory milestone on a much longer and harder road, a temporary refuge, or a safe haven. However, I hate to say this, but the other symbols in the chart do not bode well for a peace agreement. And we can already see the fragility of the ceasefire. The morning after the ceasefire, which was supposed to include Lebanon, Israel rained 100 bombs on Lebanon in 10 minutes. We have two outer planets conjunct the angles of this chart located in Washington, D.C., and Pluto is tightly conjunct the midheaven, symbolic of the very serious threats of annihilation coming from our president. As a comparison, Pluto is more loosely conjunct the midheaven during the Sagittarius full moon chart last June. 10 days after that full moon, we launched a surprise bunker bomb attack on Iran's nuclear facilities. Uranus, at the final degree of Taurus, is also loosely conjunct the ascendant, descriptive of the unpredictability and disruptive influence of our national identity and confusion around our values on the world stage. You see, Venus is also rising in this chart and heading toward a conjunction with Uranus. Mars, symbolizing the god of war, is strong in its own sign, ruling both the new moon and the 12th house of spies and hidden enemies, and also the 7th house of allies and open enemies. Mars, sitting in the 11th house of the legislature and friends of the nation, is separating from a sextile of Pluto and applying to a conjunction of Saturn. Saturn rules the 10th house of the presidency. Saturn here in gate 17, line 5, is overconfident in its position and closed to other points of view. On the 19th, 2 days after this new moon, Mercury, Mars, and Saturn will all be in this gate and line, more prominently demonstrating an impasse from all sides. The new moon in the 12th house rules a feral Jupiter in the 3rd house of the media and neighboring nations. It's feral because it's not making any other connections to other planets in this chart. This manifests as a lone wolf type of energy, causing tension amongst team members. Jupiter, often symbolizing the elite, rules the 8th house of financial agreements with other countries and the 11th house of the friends of the nation and the legislature. Jupiter is a wild card in this new moon. In Washington, D.C., the new moon falls on the 2-4 profile of the cross of laws. And Ross says this about this cross. This cross describes how one's purpose in life is to affect the whole community of humanity. That's their purpose. As a matter of fact, they're more likely to suffer from the law than anyone else. They'll get punished by the law because they're the ones who will push that button. And yet without them, we would have no order. We would truly have only chaos and survival of the fittest. We would live in a world that is still as cruel as the animal world. All these people who think the animal world is nice, it's just dog eat dog. And yeah, we are sure feeling that energy right now. Shortly after this new moon on April the 23rd, Venus will conjunct Uranus one final time in Taurus before Uranus enters Gemini on the 25th. And so it got me wondering if another woman will be on the chopping block in Trump's cabinet. I want to review the other women who he's fired and how those activations all involve Venus. But then I saw this interesting T-square with the sun in Taurus, the moon in Leo, and Pluto in Aquarius. And it had me wondering if a woman might not be involved, but it might be a man who actually gets the cut. So it's something to keep in mind. So he fired Kristi Noem when Venus was at the final degrees of Pisces. It had just sextiled Uranus in Taurus, and Venus was applying to Neptune and Saturn. Now, I put her natal chart on the outer wheel of this transit chart, and you can see a lot of her chart was being activated during this time. Venus, Neptune, and Saturn were all opposing her natal Pluto. And it demonstrated the humiliation that she received from Congress asking her very publicly about her affair with her chief of staff. And you can see that the sun was highlighting her Mars. Her husband was sitting right behind her when Congress asked her this question. And Pluto is coming to aspect her North Node very soon. This firing definitely push her into a new direction. We'll see what that direction will be upcoming. I also thought it was very interesting that her Jupiter was aspecting the descendant of this chart. Jupiter is often demonstrative of somebody's husband. And right after this firing, there was that leak of her husband's fetish with cross-dressing, basically cosplaying as her in a very fascinating way. And so it made me wonder whether this leak was part of really digging her, or if this leak was dangled in front of the White House and that was the reason she was fired. Chicken or egg, I'm not sure. But you can see all of this playing out in this chart. And he fired Bondi the day before the Venus square Pluto transit. Again, I've placed Bondi's natal chart on the outer wheel of the transit chart. If you remember, there was a T-square in this chart, Pluto square Venus in Taurus. And now it's the sun coming to square, but Venus in Taurus, and it was opposing a moon in Scorpio, and she's a Scorpio sun. And you can see her Mars-Jupiter opposition right on the angles. It was a very public firing and humiliation for Pam Bondi. Now, I wonder if there's going to be a leak about her coming out soon. We shall see. Now, I'm suspecting that this upcoming transit has something to do with Tulsi Gabbard. Her chart is really lit up right now, and she was floated as a possible candidate on Trump's chopping block. And even though a follow-up news story indicated that she was safe, I just can't help but present this chart as somebody who might be involved in this Venus-Uranus conjunction in some way. She has just had her final hit of her Uranus opposition right before this conjunction. And as you can see, it's right on the angles of this chart. Her moon and nodes are also aspecting this T-square. So I'm wondering, if she's not fired, she might be involved in another surprise announcement during this time. It just looks too perfect for her not to be involved. And then I looked at Stephen Miller also as a possible candidate because the transiting sun is going to be right on his IC. And he has this Mars-Mercury conjunction in Leo. And as you can see, it's trining Mars-Mercury in Aries. So I didn't see his chart as being a possible cut during this time, but he's definitely involved in something around this transit. So we shall see. Well, it's going to be another intense month, and there's going to be a lot of frustrated energy in the atmosphere with Mars and Saturn meeting up. So be mindful of what's going on around you. Remove yourself from conflict as tempers will be high. Channel the energy into productive projects. Get lots of physical exercise and disconnect when needed. Whatever you do, don't get embroiled in the outrage prompts. Fuel whatever anger that comes up into something productive. There's no sense in spreading outrage for the sake of spreading it. If it doesn't move you into productive action, remove yourself and find something that does. Okay, that's what I'm going to do this month. I'll see you next time.